Across the Channel in Brussels right about now, the European Union leaders, it looks as though round about now, will be discussing Brexit. It's meant to be a brief discussion. But what really struck you about the reaction in Brussels today as those leaders gathered was they looked very stern, very gloomy about the prospect of no deal, as they warned about it in interviews. The Prime Minister, by contrast, in a clip that was released just over an hour ago, bounds up to the camera and talks enthusiastically about no deal. He uses his rose-tinted euphemism of choice, calling it an Australia deal. He wouldn't have to look very far in the Treasury or the Office for Budget Responsibility forecast to see it's not quite seen that rose-tintedly there. And I suspect his tone will alarm those people over in Brussels. Maybe it's designed to alarm those people over in Brussels about how ready he is to embrace no deal. The only thing it seems that both sides are united about is that last night's dinner in Brussels didn't energise the talks process, and it's really hard to see how it can come to a successful conclusion in the only 3 days that are scheduled for it to be completed.
So no chance?
We're on a tight ship here,
quite
tight too.
They agreed the stalled talks on a free trade agreement should continue, but it's far from clear what impetus they managed to give those talks.
I had a very long conversation yesterday night with the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. It was a good conversation, but it is difficult. We are willing to grant access to the single market to our British friends. It's the largest single market in the world. But the conditions have to be fair. They have to be fair for our workers and for our companies. And this fine balance of fairness has not been achieved so far. Our negotiators are still working, and we will take a decision on Sunday. Thank you.
Ursula von der Leyen was speaking as the European Council begins. She's briefing EU leaders this evening on her talks with Boris Johnson. His attempts to have one-on-one conversations with some of those leaders have so far been rebuffed. Tonight, Boris Johnson said the EU proposals stopped Britain being able to shape its own policy after Brexit.
It was put to me that this was kind of a bit like twins, and the UK is one twin, the EU is another, and if the EU decides to have a haircut, then the UK has got to have a haircut or else face punishment, or the EU decides to buy an expensive handbag, if the EU decides to buy an expensive handbag, then the UK has to buy an expensive handbag too, or else face tariffs and punishment. And clearly that's not a sensible way to proceed.
Right up to the end of this year, the UK has laws that match the EU's across all the areas governed by EU rules. For the new year onwards, if the EU decided to add to its laws, say tightening up environmental controls, the UK would have a lighter regulatory burden. To EU eyes, maybe a competitive advantage. If so, the EU says, at that point, post-Brexit Britain should either match the EU regulations, writing some new laws into the statute book here, or face tariffs on exports to the EU. Some with experience of Brexit negotiations are wondering what could bridge the gap.
And it has been dealt with in the past. You can put into place the review clauses, you can have sunset clauses, you can come back at a later date to see if the two parties are still happy with the arrangement. We saw that, for example, in the deal that was struck around the Irish border back when the withdrawal agreement was negotiated. So there are precedents where seemingly irreconcilable differences have been dealt through, for lack of better expression, and muddling through.
After his meeting with the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, the Prime Minister told the Cabinet to get ready for no deal. And then he told the country too.
Yes, I do think that we need to be very, very clear. There's now a strong possibility that we will have a solution that's much more like an Australian relationship with the EU than a Canadian relationship with the EU. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
The government's own documents suggest it wouldn't feel that good. There would be tariffs potentially on 90% of the goods the UK exports to the EU. Tariffs too on imports from the EU, raising prices here. Massive delays for freight as border checks mean months of lorry queues. A surge in business costs, estimates of £15 billion of extra paperwork, all at the same time as the biggest peacetime economic shock for centuries. The European Commission published some draft plans for certain sectors it wants Britain to sign up to in the event of no deal. If there's no deal between Britain and the EU, the laws governing certain areas like aviation fall away. So the EU's proposing some discrete mini deals. They'd last 6 or 12 months and they'd give legal underpinnings so the UK and the EU can access each other's airports and airspace, each other's roads and, controversially, each other's fishing waters. The government here responded saying it was interested in the first 2, but the EU could forget the third. Boris Johnson and Michel Barnier know from the withdrawal agreement talks how a late switch of tactic can save a deal that seemed unreachable. But last night's talks did not provide the spark needed, and little time remains.